Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery. It's a beautiful Monday morning, March 13th, 2023. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time, 8 o'clock Central, to talk about strategies, tips, techniques, share success stories, and to support each of you. Of course, this is quite an unusual Monday with the big bank failing last week, and I guess President Biden will be going on the air here momentarily to talk about this financial crisis that we're in as a nation. It certainly brings forth the importance of the point of liquidity. And so that, in fact, is our discussion today, not on a macro basis, but on an individual business basis. What is liquidity and how does that impact our access to capital? So as should be shown here on the screen, again, that is our topic, liquidity. So let's get into that. What exactly is liquidity? Well, a company's liquidity indicates its ability to pay its debt obligations or current liabilities without having to raise external capital or taking out loans. So much of what you and I do, we want to step away from looking at things through our eyes and our perspective, and instead look at it from the view of lenders. So do you think that liquidity is important to lenders? I would think so, because again, it's a measure, the ability of a small business to be able to pay its debts without having to take on debt. Because I understand that a lot of us may come up with the concept of, well, loan me a bunch of money, and of course I'll have enough cash, enough liquidity to pay my bills. But with liquidity, it's a measurement without having to borrow money, our ability to pay our bills. So as stated here, high liquidity means that a company can easily meet its short-term debts, while low liquidity implies the opposite, and the company could immediately face insolvency or even bankruptcy. Well, the truth is, a lot of these small businesses that you and I work with are not very liquid. They look risky. But the beautiful thing is you and I can help them with that, and we will help them with that, and we're going to talk about that today. So is this a filter, a screen, a reason not to work with a client? Just the opposite. These are the clients that need you and I the most. You and I, as technical advisors, we help small businesses become credible on paper. And I would argue that the lack of liquidity is one of the main reasons that many small businesses can't get funding. But you and I can fix that in less than 24 hours. So let's progress further. All right, so let's talk about liquidity ratios, because if we agree that liquidity is a big deal, then the question becomes, well, how do we measure liquidity? What is the metric, the way to assess that? And in the financial industry, we use liquidity ratios. So liquidity ratios determine a company's ability to cover short-term obligations and cash flows. As we mentioned earlier, most lenders, and there's exceptions, but most lenders are unwilling to loan money to insolvent borrowers. But again, you and I have the solution to that as highlighted in yellow. So again, if that doesn't make sense, let's stop and revisit it. Why would a small business look risky to a lender if they're essentially insolvent? There's no money. There's no money to be able to pay the bills. So solvency matters, liquidity matters, but if we run into a liquidity issue with a client, you and I can address it very easily. Any questions so far on liquidity or liquidity ratios? Okay. And Charles, you're right. When you took accounting or finance classes, I realized that this is a bit redundant. So those of you that have a financial background, this is pretty elementary. But for a lot of small business owners, they don't understand what liquidity is or why it matters. And if they don't understand the relevance of it, then as you and I try to fix their problem to help them become more credible, it seems irrelevant to them, but it's very relevant. Okay, moving forward. So there are different liquidity ratios. The most important, I would argue, is the current ratio. We all probably remember doing these mathematical problems when we had tests in accounting or finance. So the current ratio is a liquidity ratio that measures a company's ability to pay short-term obligations or those due within 1 year. So that's key. A current ratio is our ability to pay bills within 1 year, short term. So it tells lenders, investors, and or analysts how a company can maximize the current assets on its balance sheet. Let's pause there. My client doesn't have a balance sheet. That's okay. We're going to help them create a balance sheet if they don't have one. If they're looking to raise capital, then having a balance sheet is important. It's relevant. And we can't fall behind this veil of ignorance to say, oh, I'm a startup company. I don't have a balance sheet. I don't need a balance sheet. Well, you do need one, and we'll help them with that. So again, a current ratio tells lenders, investors, and analysts how a company can maximize the current assets on its balance sheet to satisfy its current debt and other payables. So let's go ahead and define what current assets are, and we'll also then define what current liabilities are, because those are the two metrics that goes into the current ratio. Starting with current assets, it's what's listed on the company's balance sheet. Again, sidebar. Should every business have a balance sheet? Yes. If they don't, we'll help them create it. We need a balance sheet if we want to go after business funding. Our business needs to look credible and organized. And we can't take this informal approach of, oh, I don't have a balance sheet, I don't need one. Well, if we're going after larger capital raises, we certainly do. What's on the balance sheet? Of course, assets, but we're right now talking about current assets. Current assets includes cash. Well, let's talk about this cash on a company's balance sheet. It's normally reconcilable with the business bank statements, right? Because that's normally where we would put our cash. What's another example of an asset that goes on the balance sheet that falls under this category of current assets? Highlighted here, accounts receivable. Monies that's owed to the business by other parties, as well as inventory. So the key is current assets are assets on the balance sheet that are expected to be liquidated or turned into cash when? In less than a year. In less than a year. Now, the other side of that equation or that formula are current liabilities, and these are items that we expect to be paid within a year. So we're matching time period. Everybody good on current ratio? Okay. So how can you immediately improve liquidity in your current ratio? The most effective and legal way to immediately and dramatically improve liquidity in a company's current ratio is to add accounts receivables. We've already identified that accounts receivables are current assets. So we can add accounts receivables to the company's balance sheet. And that's step one. Step two is then we turn around and liquidate those receivables into cash. So that's one of the things that you and I do is we literally, with the collateral support program, can transfer legally, ethically, accurately transfer, I don't know, as little as 100,000, $1 million or more of AR to any business's balance sheet, even if they're a startup. And then what do we do? Because you see the "and" in all caps. Then what do we do? Then we want to help them liquidate that to create positive cash flow. Because it doesn't matter if you own a bakery or a lawn care company. It doesn't matter of your business. If you have AR, the goal is to convert that AR into cash, to collect the money owed. All right, so let me make this a bit smaller. And let's see what questions or concerns any of you have in terms of liquidity, liquidity ratios, the current ratio, or specifically how you and I can help any small business become more liquid based upon adding assets to their balance sheet in the form of accounts receivables. Who has questions comments, concerns on that? All right, so Timothy's asking, when does this come up during the process? Well, once a client has enrolled in the credit and funding program, we proceed with collecting data to determine credibility issues and create a funding plan. And it may very well be that we identify objectively, right? This isn't just us making something up, but it may be that they lack liquidity. And that's an issue. That's a barrier. But that's what you and I are here to do, is to help people overcome the barriers, the issues, the limitations, to make them credible on paper. So yeah, I don't know that this really needs to be something, Timothy, that you go screen off of. The less liquid they are, I guess the more they need our program. But just normally get them enrolled. If you're an affiliate, you have a landing page, a link, and drive them to there, and we'll implement. If you're a white label partner, as you're involved with collecting the data, once a client's contracted, you'll be able to identify if there are liquidity issues. And if there are, then we probably need to look at resolving that, because it's a significant barrier to getting funding. It's a real credibility issue for a business that's insolvent to be looking for funding. Now, I understand from a novice's perspective, well, if I had plenty of liquidity, then I wouldn't need funding. And I guess I can't argue that, but the point more so is, if we don't have enough liquidity, it doesn't look like we can afford to pay back the loan. Therefore, we probably won't get approved. But the good news is you and I can improve the liquidity of any business very easily, very quickly, and of course, legally. Who has questions on liquidity? All right. Any other questions that anyone has regarding the credit and funding program? Everyone should have their landing page. It should be up and operational. It's going to look just like the credit and funding page that you can find on guaranteedfunding.org. You should be able to be generating good volume. We've had lots of trainings regarding different ways to get leads, different sources of leads, some that don't cost anything. We had a training about a week ago, a little over a week ago, on Craigslist. Not really as much about posting ads on Craigslist, but using Craigslist to get referral relationships. On our affiliate side, we pay overrides while we're not network marketing. We're MLM, we pay 3 levels deep. So it's great for you to go out and connect with key influencers. They go out and bring on clients. You get paid overrides. Any other just general support questions or issues we need to address? Because it sounds like we're all on the same page here, which is that liquidity matters. It's a barrier. If we don't have liquidity because we don't look solvent, we understand that we can help clients become liquid very quickly by adding receivables to their balance sheet and then helping them liquidate those receivables. All right, Alfred's asking about the liquidity, the liquidation process of the receivables. So our approach, and it's evolved, of course, but our approach at helping our clients liquidate receivables has evolved, and we use a rather infrequently used but very successful model of kind of putting the client in a corner, that if they have breached the agreement, which they have, which is the underlying point of the suit, and so remarkable success using this rather hybrid approach. But any of you that needs help liquidating your receivables, we can talk more about that offline. But when someone owes you money, really there's a couple options. You could send them to a collection agency, but most people don't care about bad credit anymore because they know that there are programs that can resolve that. Or you can litigate against them, and it's not so simple to say, oh, okay, I'll just go sue them for the money that they owe. How you sue them makes a tremendous difference. And maybe that doesn't even make sense, but the way in which the suit is structured, the way that the petition is developed, what's not only expected but demanded from the debtor, the person that owes the money, can vary based upon how it's set up. And so there are some very, very important nuances in litigating debt that we can show you, best practices, and it's night and day different. Just to think that anyone can go down to the courthouse and file a small claim suit, that's true statement. But how that suit is developed and filed makes a tremendous difference. Tremendous difference. And we worked with one of the attorneys that wrote the debt collections manual for the Texas Bar Association. And often people don't know what they don't know, but the approach of litigation can vary considerably. And frankly, early on, we didn't know those things and we didn't have as good a success. Now it's crazy good. All right. Well, if there's any assistance that you need, you can email us, you can call us, you can text us. We're happy to assist you. Thank you for your time today. We'll see you back tomorrow morning, and we'll keep an eye on the markets and see if any more banks are going to fall. Hopefully not today. Have a good day. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.